Welcome to Defending Utah Radio. I am Ben McClintock, your host this evening. I really appreciate you joining us this Friday night. It's date night. I know what you probably did with your wife was you said, hey, it's Friday night. Defending Utah's on, and it's our date night. Let's sit around the radio and listen to Ben McClintock. And I'm glad you did. I'm joined tonight with my co-host, Shahzad. Are you here?
Hi, Ben. I'm definitely here.
You're definitely here. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me just for a little bit before you got to take care of some family business. Before we get started with the show, we want to go over some Defending Utah radio business. Please like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/defendingutah. And be sure and like us. That way you get updated on news stories that we're putting up, investigations, original investigations. Shahzad's done some original investigations that nobody else has dug into before. And that's something that we really pride ourselves on in Defending Utah, thinking right and wrong, not right and left.
And don't forget also we have a YouTube channel. We have the Defending Utah YouTube channel and podcasts up. So look us up on YouTube. There's a link on defendingutah.org for how to listen to Defending Utah Radio, and we've got all the information there on all the places you can hear the podcasts, where you can hear live broadcasts, and also how you can listen on your Android phone as well.
Just your Android? You can't listen on your iPhone?
You can. I just haven't. I haven't officially figured out any instructions for that yet. Right?
Too hoity-toity for us, anyways. If you got an iPhone.
The NSA phone?
Is
that what you? They're all the NSA.
Yeah, because like Android, right? They're free from NSA abuse, right?
They're Google phone. Right? That's what Androids are. So you really can't get away from it, no matter where you are.
Unless you have like
unless you're having an encrypted line. If you're a little tech savvy and you know how to encrypt.
Spend $2,000 on your phone, and they. So most of our listeners are going to be listening on or will be using their NSA phone.
Yeah, I think
so. Or their landline. Also, during the show, if you have a comment, a question, a complaint, some harassment, go ahead and post that on there or send us a message. And if it's suitable for government-controlled radio, we'll definitely put it on there. And
hold on. Let me ask our government handler if you could say that. Hold on. Okay, he says that's okay.
That's okay. Oh, good. Also, check out our website. Also, we've got the contest. People, we need your money to stay on the air. And so if every $5 donation gets you an entry to win the drawing for a lifetime membership to Front Sight Weapons Training, one of the most elite weapons training in the country, and you'll receive that anytime you've got that, for free. You'll be able for the rest of your life to receive all kinds of different weapons training, and it's a $15,000 value.
If you were to pay for those classes individually,
online, right? Yep. And so it's a screaming deal. So every $5 donation, so you donate $20, you got yourself 4 entries into the drawing. So please go to defendingutah.org and donate and help keep us on the air. Also, advertise with Defending Utah Radio. Every advertiser that does a $5 ad once a day for every day that we're on the air for 6 months receives that as well, just automatically. There's no drawing. You advertise with us for that 6-month contract, and you automatically get that free lifetime membership to Front Sight Weapons Training. Screaming deal.
We'll even do 2 if you do 2 6-month
periods. Or
why not?
Well, we'll definitely make a deal with you. You'd be crazy. You can't afford not to do it, right? It's everybody needs training. I mean, if you've bought your weapon to defend your family against Second Amendment reasons, for reasons of defense against burglars, whatever it is, you need to know how to use it. It's just like anything, sports, cooking, driving. You can't just say, "Oh, I bought a car," and leave it there for 6 years, and then all of a sudden you need to go on a long trip, but you've never driven it. Not going to do you much good. Same thing with your weapon. If all of a sudden you need it, it's nice to have that muscle memory in there that they'll teach you. Otherwise, you're really not going to be as effective as you could be, and you might end up actually causing yourself more harm than not. So I really encourage you to enter that contest or advertise with us to get that screaming deal, just if for nothing else but to get the free weapons training.
Yeah.
So do that at defendingutah.org. Let's get into the news. Today's headlines. There's some really interesting ones. If my computer's just really acting slow today. But there were some really interesting news stories, I thought. On Salt Lake Tribune, a lot of controversial issues, at least for Utah. There's the ordained women movement, where Kate Kelly, one of the founders of that, got excommunicated last year. Now John DeLynn has faced a excommunication disciplinary council. The Salt Lake Tribune ran an article, and it's loading right now on my computer. It was talking about how it was delayed. And the way that they worded that was, to me, just really disingenuous, saying that it was delayed as if it was like some huge victory for John DeLynn. Like, him making it public is what put it off. But what had happened was the stake president had to deal with some family issues. And so he's like, we need to put this off and deal with that. So there's no victory for John DeLynn for going to the media. And it's like, why even discuss those things, and why even bring those out and make it a big deal to try and get yourself out of that trial? You've made yourself public, not knowing that, not that you don't believe. If you don't believe in the foundation of the organization that you're a part of, if you think that they're wrong on some key things, and why would why even bother? And so it's really interesting that they would pull that. What do you think, Shazad?
I think those are private matters between an individual and their ecclesiastical leaders. And anytime this goes into the media and someone's trying to make a big deal out of it, you just got to ask what's their angle and
right.
Why.
It wasn't the church that brought that out; it was John.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would most people care about that?
Right.
And I don't know. I guess some people think there's something to it, but
what would be the purpose of trying to, for him, a non-believer, not only in the foundations but in the doctrines? Why would he go through the effort to try and stay a member and try and get people on his side to try and avoid getting, leaving the organization?
Well, I think that's a good question that people need to ask, and I don't know why anyone would do that intentionally, unless you had an agenda of some kind. And that's the question. What's the agenda?
Well, and there's a movement called New Order Mormons that their stated agenda on their websites is to stay members so that they can influence change. They think if they can stay as a member and influence the church to become more worldly, that they can have that influence. So and he's a part of that movement. So I think they've said what their agenda is.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. The agenda is that you don't want to be a Mormon anymore, but you want to pretend to be a Mormon because you think there's some purpose in you influencing the church, even though you don't believe in the church.
Right. So they're just trying to subvert it's a subversive reasons. So the next story on KSL is Darian Hunt's mom pleads not guilty in confrontation after police shooting. So we spoke yesterday with Linda Spencer, and she has been in contact with Darian Hunt's mother, and it's an interesting story that if you don't remember the situation last year in Saratoga Springs, Darian Hunt was walking around with a sword, and there's different versions of the story that but basically he had a sword, and he was near the crossroads there in Saratoga Springs, and the police ended up shooting him, and the autopsy showed that they shot him in the back. And you can imagine, whether it was his fault or not, as a mother, you're going to be very emotional about it. The KSL article starts, Susan Hunt, whose son Darian Hunt was shot and killed by Saratoga Springs police in September, pleaded not guilty Friday to 4 misdemeanor criminal charges stemming from a confrontation with officers from the same department. With tears streaming from her face, she sat in the courtroom surrounded by family and friends, waiting to be arraigned at the Saratoga Springs Justice Court. Susan Hunt, 51, was charged on November 25th with interfering with an arresting officer, a Class B misdemeanor, driving on a denied license, a Class C misdemeanor, failing to disperse, a Class C misdemeanor, and disorderly conduct, an infraction. So we got some Class Bs and some Class Cs and an infraction on Susan Hunt. And her son was shot and killed by 2 Saratoga Springs police officers on September 10th, 2014, and she reportedly approached 2 other officers who were conducting a routine traffic stop on October 19th. Attorney Robert Sykes said Hunt stopped and apparently got into it with the officers. So that, I mean, can you imagine her feelings at that time? Probably not the smartest thing to do, but I can definitely sympathize with an upset mother wanting to maybe confront some officers about the situation. What do you think?
Well, I think it always takes a while to kind of get everybody's angle and everybody's viewpoint in some of these stories that come out in the media, and sometimes it's over time when you start to hear more details that you kind of put together some more of the pieces. So I think there are definitely questions on that story continually right now.
Yeah, and so basically, the media reported before there wasn't the several different charges, but it was basically that she hit the officer with her purse was why she got in trouble. Was the first media report, and it just seems kind of like you just leave the lady alone. You know what I mean? You're just getting hit by a purse. You need to just... If somebody hits me with a purse, I'm not going to charge them with a Class C or B misdemeanor.
Now, was that in the police report? Do we know that actually happened? Or did they just... Did someone get a video
of that? No,
yeah.
that's what when she was first arrested, that's what the reports were talking about. So we've got on KSL another news story about a fugitive that was found several years after. So he's from a different state, and he had left the state as a fugitive from Mississippi, and a few years later, they find him here in Utah. Not just a few years later, 34 years later. So this is over in Price, a man who escaped from a Mississippi prison in 1980. So
this guy's been off the radar
pretty young.
For 34 years. He's
obviously a real menace to society if he's been able to stay out of the police view for 34 years, right? So he's escaped prison in 1980 and has lived in Utah under an alias for more than 20 years, has been arrested, authorities in Carbon County announced Friday.
So he's just been trying to live his life.
Lay low. And
what was he in for originally? Does it tell us?
It doesn't tell us. We'll get through and we'll find out. Sam Gene Harris was arrested on Thursday at his home in Wellington, where he had been living under the name of Wayne Edward Stevens, according to Carbon County Sheriff Jeff Wood. He's been living there for 23 years, Wood said, right under everybody's noses. Harris, 62, was serving a 4-year sentence for his conviction on charges of shoplifting and possession of burglary tools when he escaped from prison in November 1980. So he was just a petty thief.
Petty thief.
According to Mississippi Department of Corrections spokeswoman Tara Scott. I'm not in favor of theft, but you'd think after 30-some-odd years...
Aren't there statute of limitations? How does that work? I guess he was already convicted, so that doesn't apply. Where's Bo Babcock? Can ask him. What's the official
rule on that? Records about the escape are so old that correction staff would have to go through microfiche to provide additional details about the incident. So they want to know how this guy was able to live without the government knowing about him. 30-something years without incident. That's our news stories for right now. On our website, defendingutah.org, we have...
This is some good news. This is news.
This is news.
Definitely news. This is news that everybody should be aware of.
I don't think it's something that you'll see covered on KSL or the Salt Lake Tribune.
Definitely
or
not.
Any of the local news stations, you think?
Definitely not.
So back in... we're right here. We talk about thinking right and wrong, not right and left. It's about principles, not politics, right? And so on this is about Governor Herbert, and we're not trying to pick on Republican politicians. It's too easy. It's almost like taking candy from a baby if you're going to pick on a Democrat. right? It's just too easy. I mean, Governor Herbert, I guess, I wonder if he grew up a Democrat and decided if he wants to run for office, he better switch parties in Utah County.
I think that's a fair question for a lot of people who run for office in Utah.
Because as we're going to get into, his actions as governor might show that he is in favor of big government policies. And not only...
No, he's a Republican. Come on.
And he's the most popular governor in the country. How could he be the most popular governor of the country if he's in favor, especially in Utah, if he's in favor of big government?
Oh, I guess everyone loves big government.
Or they don't know what he's really doing. Or the media, which is, of course, always in favor of bigger and bigger government, is helping to promote him. So, to give you some background, back in June of 2011, Governor Herbert hosted the National Governors Association Summit there in Salt Lake City. And at the same time, at that, he teamed up with somebody that you would think a good conservative Republican would team up with, right? Hillary Clinton. What good conservative wouldn't team up with Hillary Clinton, right? So that kind of gives you a big red flag right there. Governor Herbert teamed up with Hillary Clinton. They brought, with this Governors Association meeting, he hosted the Governors Association and said, hey, Hillary, how about you bring in the governors? We're having a governors meeting. Let's have the governors of China here, too. We got the governors of the United States, the governors of China. Let's bring them all to Salt Lake. And
while we're at it, let's bring the governor of Libya, the governor of...
How about North Korea?
There you go.
Just every tyrannical state in the world. Let's just bring all their leaders here and get together.
A bit like the UN. There you go. Every tyrannical leader.
Put them all in front of put Libya on the Human Rights Council. Let's put China in charge of free speech, right?
There you go. And let's do it in Salt Lake.
Let's do it in Salt Lake. Let's invite them together and bring them all together. You got one tyrant and 50 tyrants in America and a bunch of tyrants in China. So they brought them all together so they could make deals, which is the states are prohibited by Article 1, Section 10, Paragraph 3 of the U.S. Constitution from making deals with foreign countries. Totally unconstitutional, but that's exactly what the whole meeting was about, was making deals with, getting the governors together with the Chinese government to make trade deals and land deals, and so it's, we're just really starting off. The governor has in one meeting combined himself with Hillary Clinton and managed to violate the Constitution all in one fell swoop. And were you going to say something?
Give away land to China?
And set up the giving away of land, that's for sure. And the Salt Lake Tribune reported about this event that Communist Party-controlled newspapers, China Daily, were given press credentials to cover the event, while American news organizations were not allowed to cover the event.
That's fishy right there.
The governor teams up with China, violates the Constitution, and invites communist-controlled media, but blocks American media. Is this sounding like a good thing so far? Why is Governor Herbert the most loved governor in the country? It just blows my mind. And I wanted to show you a report that was done about this media blocking. Let's go into that right now.
I'm outside of the Grand America Hotel in Salt Lake City. This is the site, one of the venues for the National Governors Association annual meeting 2011. This is also known as the U.S.-China 2011 Governors Forum. One of the main features of this year's event are a number of Chinese governors, from provincial governors and Communist Party leaders who have come here to Salt Lake to strike deals with educational exchanges, corporate deals, and investment opportunities here in the United States with the governors of the various states. This is the second day of a three-day event. Yesterday was interesting. We did a broadcast from a different venue. That was up at the University of Utah Stadium, the Ute Stadium. And the New American Magazine was prevented from entering into the site for the governor's conference. As far as we know, we were the only media outlet that was prevented from entering. We were not allowed to have credentials. The NGA officials said that our publication was not considered to be valid, a legitimate news organization, that we were not an unbiased and objective news organization. However, as we pointed out yesterday, there were dozens of, perhaps scores, of Chinese so-called journalists who were allowed to enter into the site. I interviewed one of them yesterday, the chief U.S. correspondent for China Daily, which is one of the main propaganda organs of the Communist Party of China. And today's issue of China Daily features a front page photo of Christine Gregoire, who is the chairman of the NGA this year, the outgoing chairman. She is the governor of the state of Washington. She is shown in today's picture of China Daily, meeting with the various Chinese officials and leading the conference. I would like to point out that when I ran into problems with the National Governors Association communications office when they said that the New American Magazine would not be allowed to enter the facilities here or report on their conference in an official credentialed capacity. I tried to go above the bureaucrats at NGA who had made this decision, and I went directly to the chair. I tried to talk with Governor Gregoire herself. I talked with her staff personnel. They said, yes, this is a First Amendment issue. This is something that concerns them. They were sure that the governor would look into this. But I never heard back from Governor Gregoire or from the staff of, for instance, Governor Jerry Brown's office in California. I contacted Jerry Brown, could not talk with him or get an interview with him or Governor Gregoire. But his office also assured me that, yes, this is a serious First Amendment issue that should be open. The Governors Association should be open to journalists of all different viewpoints. And but again, no reaction so far from Governor Brown's office. Opening issue of China Daily for the conference. I interviewed the chief correspondent for China Daily here in the United States, Li Jing, and she had just come out of the conference that I had been denied entrance to. She is the assistant managing editor of China Daily overall, and again, she is their top person here in the United States. She's based in Washington, D.C. And this article that she had written, she had actually written the cover story and has written the cover stories for many of the China Daily operations online and in print. And yesterday, when I interviewed her, she informed me that, yes, there were dozens or even scores of Chinese journalists who had come here from China, from Beijing, and from the various provinces, usually as part of the entourage of the Chinese governors. So they are here in an official capacity to promote the image of these governors, not to report as objective journalists. In an article that I published online yesterday, we pointed out that just earlier this year, in January of this year, the Press Freedom Organization, international organization known as Reporters Without Frontiers, or sometimes they're called Reporters Without Borders, published a report pointing out that in January of this year, 2011, the Chinese Communist Party's Ministry of Propaganda, or Department of Propaganda, issued new directives requiring that all Chinese journalists go through a 6-month training program so that they will know the proper way to report. A government training program run by the Propaganda Ministry and run also by China Daily and some of their top officials in CCC TV, which is the Communist Chinese television program now operated here in the United States. They are forcing all journalists to go through these training programs so that they can report what the government wants them to, put out the Communist Party line. So my question is to the National Governors Association and to Jody Amir, who is the Director of Communications, who informed me that it was her decision to refuse us admission because we are not objective or unbiased reporters. Why were they promiscuously handing out credentials to all of the acknowledged propagandists who are reporting here for CCTV, for China Daily, Beijing Review, and the other various Chinese official Communist Party news sources? In one of the stories which I published online before the Governor's Summit, I pointed out that there was something very interesting, it was strange, about many of the National Governors Association news articles. And not only, this isn't strictly an NGA problem, but we see it virtually through all of the U.S. media. When Communist Party officials come over here to the United States, they are rarely, if ever, identified in any of the stories as Communist Party secretaries, Communist Party assistant secretaries. They are introduced in the U.S. media as party officials or party secretaries. I wrote a story which we published online about this, and that's probably one of the things that did not endear me to the NGA. I pointed out that when they refer to people as simply party officials, that is being very disingenuous and deceptive. When we refer to party officials here in the United States, we're referring to Democrat Party, Republican Party, Independent Party, Green Party, Constitutionalist Party. So what party are they talking about? Are they talking about Halloween party? Are they talking about a birthday party? No, they're talking about Communist Party officials. Well, it's very interesting that China Daily, in its first opening issue for the summit, didn't show this same reticence. On the back page, they show the 4 of their provincial officials who they're showcasing here at this summit. And it's very interesting that, or actually 5 of them, 4 governors and another party official, they give congratulations to them, and they show here Zhao Hongshu, Secretary of Zhejiang Provincial Committee of the Communist Party of China. So they are trumpeting it here. And my question to the National Governors Association and to the media in general is, if we're going to be truly open and transparent, why are these individuals not identified as Communist Party officials? If they were Nazi Party officials or Fascist Party officials, we would of course put that up there, and rightfully people would draw the conclusions, the negative conclusions from that. However, there is a major effort to shield the Communist Party officials from the legitimate negative connotation that people associate with that. For instance, this is one of the books that should be on most library shelves in our colleges and our high schools, but it is not. Should be available to all of the governors. The title is The Unknown Story, Mao, by Zheng Cheng, author of The Wild Swans. Very important book, biography about Mao Zedong, whose visage is still glorified. There in Tiananmen Square and throughout China, you always see Mao Zedong being honored and glorified. And but the real true record of Mao as a mass murderer and as a criminal of unparalleled depravity in human history is glossed over. We are allowed to treat him as a hero in China and here in the United States, according to much of our media, where truly he deserves a place alongside of, if not far above, Adolf Hitler. This is probably one of the reasons why the National Governors Association decided not to, or rather the bureaucrats in the National Governors Association decided not to give the New American press credentials for the conference. This is a special cover story, China, the New Investment Saviors, which examines the mad rush by not only governors but mayors and county commissioners across the country to try to solve their deficit wild spending problems by inviting Chinese corporations, including many of those Chinese state-run corporations, billion-dollar corporations, that are guilty of vast human rights violations in China and of financing terror regimes in Africa, such as the infamous Sudan regime that has been responsible for the Darfur genocide. Many of the mega corporations from China that are seeking to buy up our resources, our mines, our forests, our manufacturing here in the United States, are the very same corporations that have been cited by human rights organizations and by committees of our own U.S. Congress and of parliaments of other countries of being responsible for aiding and abetting terrorist regimes and genocidal regimes. So we examined that, as well as many other ramifications of the unquestioning acceptance of many of these state-run, communist-run, Communist Party-controlled corporations here in the United States. Whether or not the governors or people of the United States agree with that perspective is another matter, but it is certainly a valid point of view that many Americans agree with and would consider important in the debate of any policy decisions, any policies concerning trade with China, and particularly as it relates to the acquisition of corporations here in the United States by Chinese corporations, particularly our corporations here that are involved in strategic defense-related matters. So here in Salt Lake, members of the John Birch Society have been distributing copies of this magazine, as well as this little handout, which is shows the famous photo from Tiananmen Square, the heroic young man standing in front of the tanks. And the question here is, governors, how's this for your new partner? That seems to be an embarrassing question that no one wants to ask here. And so we're asking that, and we hope that many more Americans will be asking their governors, their mayors, their county commissioners about this. This is Bill Jasper reporting from the National Governors Association annual meeting in Salt Lake City, Utah.
So that was Bill Jasper from the New American Magazine talking about the media blackout that was put on him at the Governor's Conference in 2011 that was held by Utah Governor Gary Herbert. So again, just to recap, they held this. Gary Herbert teamed up with Hillary Clinton to bring all the governors from all 50 states, as well as the governors from the Chinese provinces, to get together to make deals. And then when they got here, they didn't allow. They promoted and they brought Communist Party officials and the Communist Party newspaper, China Weekly, but barred American journalists from covering the event. And in the report that Bill Jasper just did, he mentioned an interview with Li Xing of the China Daily newspaper. And I want to share that interview with you now as well. But before we get into that interview, I want to take just a quick second to give some Defending Utah Radio business. This is Defending Utah Radio on 540 AM KYAH, and you can listen as well online at defendingutah.org. We have a 24-hour loop, but you can listen to this program here on 540 AM, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m., as well as on Defending Utah Radio if you're in an area that might not be able to get that signal. Are you an appliance technician looking for work in the Utah County area? If so, we at American Appliance would love to hear from you. We have a great opportunity available for you to work alongside a great group of honest and happy technicians. We offer competitive pay based on skill, Plus, we offer health insurance and retirement savings plans. If you are interested, please contact us at 801-254-2566. That's 801-254-2566. Also, want to encourage you, if you're in the market for a new home or to sell a home, to contact Realtor Bob Womack, 801-372-7094. That's 801-372-7094. And Bob will actually be joining us in the second hour. He has vast business experience and has some interesting things to tell about his experience with internationalism and his encounters with government in his years of business, and it should be really interesting. But please contact Bob Womack of Osmond Real Estate at 801-372-7094. So back to our report on the on Governor Herbert and how he teams up with Hillary Clinton to bring the Chinese governors and the U.S. governors together to violate the U.S. Constitution, to make deals with each other. That's something that only Congress is authorized to actually do under the U.S. Constitution. In the report that Bill Jasper did for the New American, talking about how the Communist Party newspapers were welcomed to the event to cover the event, American news outlets were actually barred from the event. And Bill Jasper actually had the opportunity to interview Li Xing of the China Daily newspaper. And I'd like to play that interview for you right now. Remind you that this is William F. Jasper of the New American Magazine interviewing Li Xing of the China Daily newspaper.
Each provincial governor has brought with them a team of entrepreneurs, journalists, and other people.
How long have you been here in the United States?
Well, I've been here since late April.
Oh, so you've just been here this year so far then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although over the past 30 years...
Sorry, waiting for that to load. The internet connection on that's being a little bit slow, but that's loading. It's really interesting. I want to point out while we wait for that to start up again about this Chinese conference that the Governor Herbert being popular in Utah. There's many reasons that is just really strange to me. From this bringing the Chinese governors to get together with U.S. governors to be able to make unconstitutional deals with one another, to back in 2000 in the last session, 2 sessions ago actually, there was legislation to nullify federal gun laws. You know, there's been a lot of push to nullify increased gun control proposed by the federal government. And so Utah legislators wanted to get in front of that and say, you know what? The Second Amendment means what it says. And we're not going to ban guns in Utah, no matter what the federal government does. And under the 10th Amendment, that's the contract between the federal government and the states that created the federal government. So that means that the created cannot be greater than the creator. It's a contract. The Constitution lays out that in the 10th Amendment that whatever power was not given to the federal government is actually retained by the states and by the people. And so that this was actually this power to regulate guns was actually not only not laid out, but was prohibited by the Constitution. And unfortunately, that prohibition has been ignored. And so in a contract, if only one party is able to say what that contract means, that doesn't seem like a really good contract to enter into. If you were to call Bob Womack and enter into a contract buying a house, and only the other party was allowed to say what that contract actually meant, I don't think you'd want to get in that contract. And of course, that's not how it works. And that's not how the Constitution's supposed to work. And so what has to happen is the states have to say, you know what, feds? You're breaking your part of the deal. And we're going to actually enforce the Constitution by saying that your laws are, that you're prohibited from making or not authorized to make. Either one of those is something that we're not going to allow here in the state of Utah. And some people have said that states can't actually do that. Well, they've done it several times. In fact, it goes back to Thomas Jefferson explaining that was the option. as well as recently as 2007, 2008, 21 states nullified the Real ID. They said, you know what, the Real ID passed by the federal government the federal government is not authorized to do it, and I'm not, and as a state, we're not going to implement it. And so they made the Real ID actually illegal in 21 states. And so it's something that the Founding Fathers spoke about and that is actually implemented today. And so under the guise of gun control laws, the state legislature said, you know what, we're not going to allow any more gun control measures and gun bans here in Utah. If the feds do that, we are not going to go along with it. And you know what Governor Herbert's response was? His response was, Utah will follow federal gun laws. And Gary Herbert, this is a Salt Lake Tribune article from January 25th of 2013. It says that Governor Herbert urged both sides in Utah's gun debate to take a deep breath and approach the issue in a reasonable, rational way, because standing up for the Constitution is not reasonable or rational, right? The governor said that with emotions running high after the shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, both sides need to be methodical about the situation. Quote, I'm a little disappointed that we have a president who is proposing 35 or 37 executive orders to solve the problem and skirting Congress. So that's a good thing. He's disappointed, whatever that means. I don't think that's the right way to solve the problem. I have someone else out there who is worried about Congress sweeping in and taking away our guns. I think that's an exaggeration too. So he goes in and he's saying that he's going to veto, and he did. He vetoed the laws that were passed by the state legislature, allowing for somebody to conceal carry without a permit from the government. And that he also was opposed to any bill that told the federal government that Utah wasn't going to go along with any gun control measures. So that interview with Ziling of the China Daily newspaper is loaded now. So I'm going to share that with you. William F. Jasper, the New American, was banned from Governor Herbert's conference with the Chinese provincial governors, while communist newspapers were allowed to come. He interviewed Ziling of the China Daily newspaper, and here's that interview.
I've really traveled back and forth a lot because I studied here back in 1981, 82, majoring in journalism, and then later on I also studied at Stanford University, and also studied journalism.
And you are stationed now in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
And before that in Beijing?
Before that in Beijing, yeah.
And did you grow up in Beijing?
I grew up in Beijing.
And for this conference, you were here for how many days?
And for this conference, for 4 days.
And I see a number of your colleagues here from the China Daily. How many are here?
And 4 are here. Yeah.
What about other Chinese media? Is there television, radio, other newsprint?
Well, I think at least more than, I don't know the exact count, but we have at least 10 or more than a dozen reporters coming from D.C. or from elsewhere, from Los Angeles. So they are posted in the States. But then there are reporters who are traveling with the 4 provincial governors. Yeah, the local media from each of the 4 provinces.
Okay, so, but there are more Chinese government delegates besides just the 4 provisional governors, correct?
That's right, and each provincial governor has brought with them a team of entrepreneurs, journalists, and other people. And for instance, Qinghai provincial governor has brought presidents from local schools, local universities, because they want to expand exchanges between the universities in China and in the U.S.
And you said you did undergraduate study or graduate study at Stanford?
Yeah, I did graduate studies at Stanford.
In journalism?
In journalism.
And you learned your English here or in China?
Well, I started learning my English back in China. After Nixon visited China, and there was a craze for learning English. But back then, our English was really, not English, but Chinese English. And then I studied English in college, back in Beijing, and then after that, I came to the States to study. Yeah.
So are you on assignment here then for a definite period of time, or just do you know how long you will be here?
Well, I'll be here in the States for 2 years.
Okay.
So far, yeah.
In Washington, D.C.?
In Washington, D.C., but I will be able to travel around the country because we want to learn more about the U.S. Although I've been traveling back and forth, and I don't think really I have been able to get down really to real America.
It's a big country.
Yeah, it is.
Just like China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you somewhere else along the trip. Okay?
Thank you.
So that was William F. Jasper interviewing Li Xing of the China Daily newspaper, who was allowed to cover the conference that Governor Herbert teamed up with Hillary Clinton to join together the Chinese provincial governors with the United States governors of all 50 states to enter into unconstitutional trade and land deals. And what's really interesting is this Li Xing of the China Daily died shortly after the interview with Bill Jasper, and I can only... she died of a brain hemorrhage. And one of the causes of a brain hemorrhage is head trauma. But anything further on her death was not really covered by the media. And so I wonder, just, that kind of a thing, when American media is banned from event, but official Communist Party media is invited to this event, and a reporter for a Chinese news, for a communist newspaper, talks to one of the banned reporters about the event, it just makes me wonder if her handlers were displeased that she might appear and discuss these media blackout, and that it might put their agenda at risk. We definitely know that it's not outside the norm for the murderous regime of the Chinese communists. And so I really wonder about that. Some people might wonder why it might matter if U.S. governors would be working on business and land deals with this murderous totalitarian regime. If it's good for the bottom line, isn't that promoting economic prosperity for all of us and promoting capitalism over state-controlled economies? And things like that. This will be this will help open up the Chinese economy and the Chinese market base for American businesses, and isn't that great for our bottom line? We can make a lot of money, and that's something that the Governor Herbert, the idea that American companies could make money, that was a theme that he had over and over again. Secretary of Agriculture Ezra Taft Benson explained that, quote, according to the Marxist doctrine, a human being is primarily an economic creature. Let me get into that when we get back from our break. That, you know what? Making money isn't the only thing that we're here for. So stay tuned after the bottom of the hour.
We sit down when all should be standing, and why do we back down at the critical moment, like a running away from the waves of the ocean? We head for the hills with the high tide approaching, as sand slips away from the castle. When it's time to stand upright, why do we falter, like placing our freedom on the sacrificial altar? We hold tight to our fears and defend our oppressors, as we fight for their lives and become the transgressors, as pacifists transform to violent aggressors. But I'm only a stranger here, I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange, but what can one man do alone? They say, what can one man do alone? When is the right time to freedom? Could it be when you start to feel creating children who'll inherit the pain and the debt of this nation and be slaves to the banks that cause hyperinflation, who are masters of commerce, lies, and bad legislation? Whoa, if you looked in the eyes of 1,000 young children through fences of razors, their innocence stolen as the red flag of tyranny flies in the open, is that when you finally notice? Whoa, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and they say I can't change all the things I find strange. For what can one man do alone? Is what can one man do alone? I'm only a stranger looking to find better nature in my fellow man, but they keep telling me it's a sin to be free, and that's more than I'm willing to stand. Where will you be when the order is given to censor your mind as free speech is forbidden, as martyrs for peace from the world will be driven away by the sound of a bellowing thunder and choke on the blood of a dream going under, as arrogant men tear up our Constitution, and from every direction we cry revolution, standing together and without permission, soldiers for truth in the war of attrition, the love of our country as our ammunition. Oh, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I am not one man alone. Yes, I'm only a stranger. I'm a long, long way from my home, and I'm going to change all the things I find strange, for I know that I'm not alone. Yes, I know I'm not alone. Not alone. Why do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down at the critical moment, like running away from the waves of the ocean? We head for the hills with the high tide approaching, as sand slips away from the castle. When it's time to stand upright, why do we falter, like placing our freedom on the sacrificial altar? We hold tight to our fears and defend.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. This is Ben McClintock joining you this evening. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here with us on this Friday night, this date night. Hopefully you and your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend are sitting around the radio and listening to the Voice of Freedom here in Utah on 540 a.m. You can listen to us Monday through Friday right here on 540 a.m. Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. or online at the same time, live, on defendingutah.org. And also we have a 24-hour feed on defendingutah.org that you can listen to with liberty-based music and liberty-based talks going over the principles of freedom and also exposing those threats to liberty. So thank you for joining us this evening. Before we went to the break, we were talking about Utah Governor Gary Herbert. And, what has he done? A lot of people I saw on a Common Core Facebook webpage the other day, page the other day that said, besides Common Core, what else has Governor Herbert done that doesn't make you happy? Isn't he generally good? He's the most popular governor in the country right now. And I wanted to go through and really expose Governor Herbert, and that he's not. It's not just one issue that he's sacrificed our freedoms on. It's not just Common Core, and it's a myriad of issues, and it's very, very concerning. And we talked about before the break how Governor Herbert teamed up with Hillary Clinton. Now, what conservative does that? I'm here with Bob Womack, who is one of my sponsors, but he's also has an interesting story, and he's joined with me and I'd like him to comment before we get into his story about some of the things that we've talked about. What do you think about Governor Herbert teaming up with Hillary Clinton?
Well, I respect Governor Herbert quite a lot in most things, but he's not always right.
That's like most of us. We're not. But
maybe a little more so than most.
And then not only does he team up with that, but he gets all 50 U.S. governors together with the Chinese provincial governors to discuss on how they can violate Article 1, Section 10, Paragraph 3 of the U.S. Constitution and make trade and land deals with each other. And then on top of that, he invites the event invites Chinese Communist Party controlled newspapers, but bans U.S. reporters.
Ben, I got into manufacturing for a while, and when I started manufacturing, I kind of got an education on this globalization and how the Communist Party is operating in China and so forth. And whenever you're ready, I'll get into that story.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons that Governor Herbert gave for this event and promoting it as a great thing is, dealing with a murderous regime, it's really beneficial to our pocketbooks, and made it an economic issue. Well, Ezra Taft Benson, who was the Secretary of Agriculture under Dwight Eisenhower, as well as a popular church leader here in Utah, he explained, quote, according to Marxist doctrine, a human being is primarily an economic creature. In other words, his material well-being is all important. His privacy, his freedom are strictly secondary. The Soviet Constitution reflects this philosophy in its emphasis on security. Food, clothing, housing, medical care. The same things that might be considered in a jail. The basic concept is that the government has full responsibility for the welfare of the people, and in order to discharge that responsibility, must assume control of all their activities. It is significant that in actuality the Russian people have few of the rights supposedly granted to or guaranteed to them in their constitution, while the American people have them in abundance, even though they are not guaranteed. End of quote. And that's from his popular talk, The Proper Role of Government. And so it's Marxist doctrine to focus on our economic well-being. When we put economics prosperity above that of personal liberty, we're actually espousing a Marxist doctrine. And it's really interesting that the Governor Herbert would focus on the economic aspect with a communist regime as opposed to the liberty aspect.
Well, and Ben, I am capitalist from the tip of my hair to the end of my toenails, and I have worked all my life toward defending capitalism and defending our freedoms and so forth. And it really disturbs me that we've come to a place where this globalization, which by the way has been a very good thing for our economy and the things that we have and so forth. When you look at homes that have 3 and 4 TVs and 3 and 4 computers half a dozen cell phones and 4 cars in the driveway.
Historically speaking, the most poor American, even yet now in the world, the most poor American lives like a king.
Compared to about 85 or 90% of the population.
Yep.
And that's certainly true. But it comes with some great baggage. The globalization of the economy leads to the political globalization that so many people seek today, and that's kind of a scary thought. We have glutted ourselves with the economic benefits of the economic globalization, and for that we are paying a political price.
Absolutely. We're seeing that merging, using economics, again, focusing on our economic creature, where it's been used to deteriorate American independence as a nation, as well as our economic freedom.
We're selling our freedom for the goodies that we're getting, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It seems pretty obvious. So we really notice, if you listen to a lot of the Trotskyites, somebody that is says that they're a conservative, but they actually focus on Marxist ideas like economics above personal liberty, who ridicule that, opposing government programs such as wiretappings, drones, and the Patriot Act, urging instead to focus on economics as bread and butter issues, I heard it described as. And so you really, when somebody wants to focus on economics above personal liberty, that to me it's a huge red flag. And so, is the current regime as monstrous as Mao? And if you go onto our website, defendingutah.org, and look up the article, Governor Herbert sells Utah out to the Chinese communists, we go through and we document what it is that they're doing. Mao Zedong, he was the Chinese communist revolutionary and the founding father of the People's Republic of China. And he governed as the chairman of the Communist Party of China from its establishment in 1949 until his death. And his Marxist-Leninist theories, military strategies, and political policies are collectively known as Maoism. And Mao was responsible for the death of at least, this is a low estimate, of at least 45 million of his own countrymen. And what's interesting, Hitler was an evil man. I don't think that's in dispute amongst us. and he murdered 8 million, up to 8 million people. But he was discriminatory in his murder. He focused on a small group of people to kill, 8 million people. But Mao, he was more politically correct. He was non-discriminatory. He had no problem with killing anybody. It wasn't just Jews that he wanted to murder. He was okay with killing anybody, and so he killed at least 45 million of his own countrymen, and which makes Hitler look small time.
Right.
And the leaders of the communist China, they continue to this day to torture and kill millions of their own people. We have on the website, and of the murder and the mayhem that they do, even to this day, of killing political prisoners in mass, and the viewer discretion is advised, because these images of the mass murder and the mass graves that they do, they tie these people up. And back in 1989 with the Tiananmen Square, where they were willing to roll over somebody for exercising their first, what we believe in America is our First Amendment right to free speech, our protected right. They go through and they have you can see some of the images on the article of chemical burns and electric burns and beatings of men and women. There was one individual that you'll see that was chained up for so long that his arm grew around his chains. And not only are they involved in mass torture, but they are involved in mass forced abortions. As reported by the Washington Times, from that every 2.4 seconds, a woman in China undergoes a forced abortion. So it's not like this, in America there's a lot of people that like to say that they're free, they're pro-choice when it comes to abortion. And I think that anybody, no matter what your position on abortion is, can agree that forcing someone to murder their baby is an atrocity. And they do that in China every 2.4 seconds.
Well, I hate to demonize the likes of Hillary Clinton and Governor Herbert for of course, for those things, but when consorting with people like that, I think some soul searching would be in order. I know that I'd like to tell the Sam Walton story.
Okay.
To kind of set the stage for what I want to say here today. Sam Walton put his stores into small towns around America, and he did so in such a fashion that he was very, very concerned about local economies and things. Sam Walton did not allow any foreign product in his stores, period. I was raised in a small town in Texas, Graham, Texas. We had a Walmart there long before most people in the big cities ever saw a Walmart or even knew what it was. And you couldn't buy a non-American product in those stores. Everything in the store was American made. When his children wrested the company away from him, that changed over just a couple of years to where there was no American-made product in the stores. Everything was foreign.
Wow.
They built the big super Walmarts and so forth and just changed everything. Well, I didn't understand what that entailed at the time, didn't really know. And, I'm, again, trying very, very hard not to demonize the corporate structure that kind of follows along with what Walmart has done, because the corporations have a responsibility. The people that run the corporations have a responsibility to maintain themselves as a competitive company that makes a profit for the people that invest their money and their lives into building these companies. But my experience with Walmart and other sources is we need to blame the consumer. The consumer runs in there to Walmart and never asks a question, where was this made, or looks to see if it doesn't say made in China on it, which, by the way, today just about everything does, and buys whatever's cheapest or whatever they think is best suited to them, and takes into no account what was made in America and what was not. I got into the manufacturing business in the late 1990s, and the first awakening I had was when we started the patent process, and I had developed a new type of signpost for the real estate industry that had a built-in driving mechanism, was quite unique, and was well received in the marketplace, and we did a lot of business in the Sun Belt. But in the process of attempting to get my patent, and by the way, I had a design patent at my behest. Just all I had to do was sign the paperwork and have it done. But I wanted a utility patent, which has a lot more protection and so forth. Anyway, so in my quest to get this utility patent, my partner and I spent approximately $50,000 and spent 3 years fighting the patent office. And by the way, what blew me away was we were assigned a gentleman who lived in India, and the United States government outsourced our patent application to a company in India to do the research and so forth. So we dealt with this Indian company for 3 years and finally decided that we'd just proceed with our product and with our marketing plan without the patent. It's kind of amazing. When we first started making this product, we outsourced everything. My partner and I were both real estate agents. We outsourced everything, and it cost us about $35 to build one of these posts, and we wholesaled them at that time for $79. and retailed them for $99. And basically we targeted the realtor bookstores throughout the Sun Belt, and we started building a substantial business. As we continued to outsource, we came into issues where we had a lot of quality issues that came back to bite us. So we started bringing everything in-house. We bought a manufacturing plant outside of Sedona, Arizona, a little town called Camp Verde, and we started building the product ourselves. We got to where this $35 price tag for each one of these to us, we got it to where we were about $23.50. And that was with my buying steel. In fact, I was buying steel from Geneva Steel here in Utah. And
which was packed up and shipped to China.
Yes, exactly. It was one of the last sources for American steel if you research it. So I'm buying my steel from Geneva Steel in quantity, and we built our own powder coating line and built a big powder coating oven and all these other things. Did some very innovative things as far as the fabrication of the product went and so forth. And we got to a place where we had 17 employees, 4 salespeople that were working full time, and then of course my partner and myself. And we worked very hard at getting the price down on this product so that we could be competitive. And one day a gentleman walked into my office from Phoenix, and he was representing a Chinese company. He said, "We've been watching you guys. We see that you're starting to really take off and things are doing very well. And by the way, we'd like to build your product for you." And I said, "Well, gosh, I don't think so. We got 17 people working here, and they're relying on us for a paycheck, and we're doing okay." And he says, "Well, just let us bid it for you." And so I said, "Well, I'll talk to my partner." He came back the next week after I spoke to my partner, and I told him, I said, "I don't think we're interested." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do." He said, you sell me 1 dozen of your posts, and I'll pay to ship them to China. And they can, and if you will allow us to have your specifications and so forth, I'll have them bid your product for you. And if nothing else, you may learn something about how to better cut your costs. And I bid on that, and I said, "Well, okay, that sounds all right." So he bought 1 dozen of our posts, paid retail for them. Yes, sir. And he shipped them to China. And about, it took 5 weeks, I think. Back came 1 dozen signposts that they had made. They cut ours up and looked them all over and read our specifications and so forth. And they sent us a dozen signposts that they made to our specifications and so forth. Frankly, they were darn good looking. They were machine welded versus ours being hand welded, etc., etc. Their powder coating was beautiful. They really did a nice job. I was absolutely impressed with the product. Nothing about a price. We just received these posts one day, and we took a couple of them and cut them up, looked them over and so forth, and I was absolutely just impressed into my socks. And I thought, boy, they're probably going to cut our price by 25 or 30%. We were still at about $23 to build one of these posts, put it in a box, and get it ready to ship out. And the fella came in a couple of days after the post arrived. He said, "Well, I see you got your posts." I said, "Yes, we did." He said, "What do you think?" I said, "What do you think I think? I think they're very, very well done." And he said, "Well, we'd like to do some business with you." And I said, "Well, what's it going to cost me?" He says, $8.50 a copy. After he picked me up out of the floor, I said, "Well, gosh, what's it going to cost in the box?" He said, "That's in the box." I said, "Man, I don't know how you do that." My next question was, "What's it going to cost me to get them here from China?" He said, "That's sitting on the wharf in Los Angeles. All you got to do is pick them up." I was stunned. He said, well, are you ready to do business? I told him, I said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is have an employee meeting and discuss this with my partner and with my employees. And I said, I'll let you know. We had a long meeting and a few people cried and so forth.
Because they knew they couldn't compete with that kind of price.
Well, and I've since learned that a whole lot of that price had to do with manipulation of Chinese currencies and things of that sort. And to make a long story short, which I never am able to do, we wound up visiting with the employees and explained to the employees that there were a number of issues, but that if we basically agreed that everyone would redouble their efforts and we'd do everything we can to get the price on our product down to where we can be more competitive. And we all worked hard at that for another year and a half or 2 years. Another couple of things came on the market. We didn't have the patent for protection, and a company in Louisiana took their product to China and just kicked our tails big time. It was pretty nasty the last couple of years in business. And as the business dwindled, we wound up having people losing their jobs anyway and so forth. And the rest, as they say, is history. It's sad that we're not able to compete because these people are allowed to do the things they do in the way of manipulating their currency and using their people the way they do and so forth. It's very, very sad, but it's the way of the world. Again, the only way that anyone is going to compete with that is to jump into the middle of it and be a part of it. And that's why I don't blame our corporate executives who work very hard, again, to protect the interest of their investors. And I see capitalism as a tool of socialism to bring socialism to bear.
We're basically funding the Chinese socialists and the Chinese communists and the socialists of the world because of that. And it's yes. I can see what you're saying, but what's interesting is that, again, putting economics above human liberty is not a capitalist idea. And getting back into that is I want to get into some more details of what the threat is and why. Go ahead. You want to interrupt?
Well, you mentioned capitalism, and here's what happened in China. The young lady that was being interviewed on the first part of this segment here mentioned Richard Nixon.
Yeah,
Richard Nixon opened the gates to China.
Absolutely, he did,
and that was the first phase. The second thing that happened that was very, very significant was when the British decided to return Hong Kong to China.
Right.
Now, the agreement was that for 100 years, China would not significantly change the structure of the business environment in Hong Kong. What happened was, suddenly the Chinese started getting all of this influx of cash. And they said, wow, look at this. We can do this. So they set up what is called enterprise zones, and they have a number of them in China. And within those enterprise zones, they allow capitalism to work to a degree. Outside of those enterprise zones, China is just as communist and harsh today as it was 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and even within those, I know people that go to China regularly in those zones, and the mindset of power and greed is just it's not looking out for liberty. It's whatever I can get for myself. And when you compared the Chinese, and I'll get into some of how it's a fair comparison to maybe during the Second World War, American companies that collaborated with the Nazis, mm-hmm. they faced prosecution from the government, and even as late as the 1990s, American companies were being held accountable for working with the Nazis during World War II. And that's, I think, a really fair, when we get into what China's actually doing, besides to their own people. We talked about the torture and the forced abortion, but they're a threat to the entire world. We actually, Joel Brenner, who served as the U.S. National Counterintelligence Executive from 2006 to 2009, said, quote, "The Chinese espionage threat has been relentless recently." End of quote. And as the Associated Press reported, quote, "Stolen information about the space shuttle and technical data about the capability of U.S. Navy's nuclear-powered submarines have also been passed along, as has simulation software used to help train fighter pilots." And U.S. Counterintelligence Chief Michelle Van Cleve told CBS, quote, "The Chinese are the biggest problem we have with respect to the level of effort that they're devoting against us versus the level of attention that we're giving to them." And so not only are they a threat to their own people and they're a horrible, bloody regime in their own country, but they are spying on us. They are doing economic espionage and economic war on the United States. And also, if you look in the Atlantic, in the June 2005 cover of the Atlantic, they admitted how we would fight China. It claimed that, quote, "The American military contest with China in the Pacific will define the 21st century." And so not only are they a horrible regime to their own people, but they're an economic threat, they're a political threat, and they're a military threat to our own country. And to invite the provincial governors and working with Hillary Clinton to bring them here is not only just getting in bed with people that, if it was you replace Chinese with Nazi, Herbert would be in prison. Not only is that a bad idea, but it could be considered, well, it's unconstitutional, as well as treasonous with the economic and the military threat that they are to our country.
Well, and at one point I was buying into this about the same as so many of the people in this country have, and it's hard to walk into a store and want to pay half again or double as much for an American-made product as one that comes out of China.
Yeah.
But if we don't come to a place where we understand how important it is for us to do so, we're going to be in very, very deep trouble. We can't continue to consume the world's goods at the rate we do, and leave our money sitting on their table.
Right. Well, we talked about how we've shipped Geneva Steel. That was the last American steel manufacturer left. We don't manufacture anything, and how can we defend ourselves if we are depending on our military enemy to make our Navy ships and our airplanes and our bullets and our guns for us? We have to be a self-sufficient country. We have to be a self-sufficient people to remain free. And by depending on other countries like China, we're setting ourselves up for disaster.
We allied with many of the European nations during World War II purely out of necessity. Mm-hmm. And Russia is probably the best example of that. And allies in today's political world are fleeting. And people that we're relying on today to be our closest allies tomorrow may be our biggest enemies.
So the Founding Fathers, when they talked about friends with all nations and entangling alliances with none, that's really we start to see how wise that was. So to recap, so we've got Governor Herbert teaming up with Hillary Clinton to bring together the governors of China and the governors of the United States together to violate the Constitution, inviting Chinese newspapers, banning American news reporters. And I mentioned earlier also that he promised to go along with any gun legislation that the feds bring up. He vetoed a bill that would allow people to conceal carry without a permit. Now, and one of the reasons he gave was because of training. He thought it was, we needed the training. if you've gone through the concealed carry course, you know that there isn't any training involved in getting a permit in the first place. So that's a nonsensical excuse. And so as an individual like myself who refuses to get permission for a God-given right, I'm forced to open carry. And that kind of scares people when you see somebody walking around with an open carry. But I'm not going to not be able to defend myself because somebody else might be afraid of me, or because I need to be able to defend myself no matter what. And so he is actually creating an atmosphere of fear off of a fake reason. It's for the longest time, it was actually because of the mindset of American people now. Before, open carry was what everybody did, and concealed carry was what criminals did because they were trying to hide something. And so, but because now everybody's afraid of guns, to be able to protect yourself and not cause an uproar, you kind of have to carry concealed. And so he's preventing people from doing that. And so it's making me go to the government for a God-given right is just outrageous. I've been a part of the training, so I know it's just about how to basically not get in trouble with the law for protecting yourself. It goes through and things to say to the police if you are forced into a situation to protect yourself. Things that say, okay, it's legal to shoot somebody in this situation, but not in this situation. Okay, that's training that you get, but you don't get hands-on training. So you don't get any of that legal training when you open carry, but that's legal. So it's just the idea that you get this training, and that's why it's good to get to the government's permission to concealed carry, doesn't make any sense because you don't need that training to open carry.
Right, yeah. Well, and if you think gun control works, try going to Mexico sometime. I've been a traveler in Mexico in my early years, most of my life. In fact, I spent a week in Mexico City once just going to the Museum of Natural History there, which, by the way, is quite an education in and of itself. But when you see what's happening in Mexico, where they ban guns completely, only police and military are allowed to have guns, but the guys that have the guns are the drug cartels, and they've got the bigger guns than the police have, and they've got all the money, so they manage to control the flow and traffic of their drugs by the use of illegal guns. And I just love that phrase, when how does that go? You guys will get old out there in the real world. When guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to go to Mexico. You go to Washington, D.C., you go to Chicago. Cities that ban guns in America are much more violent than big cities in Texas, big cities in Utah, Nevada, the places that are more friendly to being able to protect yourself. So you have those issues, and then you've got Governor Herbert's support of Common Core, and which is the federal takeover of education, which they already have taken over education, but it's giving them more control. And also he came up with it was Governor Herbert suggesting the new banning of wood burning stoves, and also he is one of the first things getting ready for the session is now he's encouraging higher taxes, gas taxes and income taxes. And so when people ask, is it just Common Core that you don't like the governor on, I say no. He is anti-liberty with guns. He is anti-liberty with self-sufficiency. He is anti-liberty with taxes. He is anti-liberty with supporting regimes that would do us harm. And there's a long list of things that, if you're a delegate out there, I hope that you'll find somebody that is more friendly to liberty.
Well, I doubt it very seriously if I would vote for Governor Herbert again. And
then there's his expansion of Medicare. He wants to bring Obamacare to Utah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to bring that up too.
Okay, yes, you're right. I'm not an ultra conservative, but I do claim conservatism, and so much of what I see today from people that are quasi or supposedly conservative disturbs me. It really bothers me.
It does. It's amazing how we have wolves in sheep's clothing. People that say one thing, and then once they get elected, the famous no new taxes, and then what do they do when they get into office? They give taxes. And so it's important that we don't just watch the news to find out what's going on with your politicians, because the media is really out there to promote a big government agenda. And so if you want to know what you've got to look at what they're doing, not just what is being reported and what they say. There's a lot of politicians that give a good talk. We talked earlier on another show of Ken Ivory taking our lands back from the feds. And of course, we want our lands back. Utahns should control Utah land. But unfortunately, his bill is actually a backdoor to Agenda 21, and it actually doesn't give our land back. It actually gives it to a multi-state trust to control the land and to keep people off of it. And so we need to watch what they do, not what they say.
Right.
And as we say at Defending Utah, think right and wrong, not right and left.
Exactly.
And so let's just take a quick break and talk about our sponsor, American Appliance. Are you an appliance technician looking for work in the Utah County area? If so, we at American Appliance would love to hear from you. We have a great opportunity available for you to work alongside a great group of honest and happy technicians. We offer competitive pay based on skill, plus we offer health insurance and retirement savings plans. If you're interested, please call us at 801-254-2566. It's 801-254-2566. And also, if you're in the market for a home or to sell a home, please call our guest today, Bob Womack. You'll take care of him, right, Bob?
Well, I've been doing this for about 45 years. In fact, I think probably June this year will be my 45th, the start of my 45th year in this business. And I can tell you I've loved every minute of it. And I've been practicing that long, and any time now I'm going to start doing it for real.
So you should give Bob a call at 801-372-7094, 801-372-7094. That's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yes, it is. And if you lose that number, just call Osmond Real Estate and ask for Bob.
Great. Thank you, Bob. So I wanted to get into some of your experience. You got into it a little bit with you talked about your business in Camp Verde, Arizona. And tell us, about some more stories that you wanted to share. We talked when we came in today that you had some experiences, and kind of what was your background with that, and what are some of the experiences you've had with the government kind of getting in your way?
Well, I think, of course, we're probably about as regulated as any entity. As realtors, I've seen us go, and by the way, a lot of this is positive. Actually, I've seen us go from being able to write a contract on a napkin and have it be a binding contract to having everything boilerplated and so forth. Many years ago in Texas, I started seeing the early, I thought, benefits of government intervention into our business when one of my older brothers discovered in the late 1960s, that FHA homes were about 10 or 15% higher priced in the marketplace than homes that didn't qualify for FHA financing. That led me into my first real estate business with my brother, and we purchased non-FHA properties, brought them up to FHA standards, and sold these properties for a little bit of a profit. And that was quite a lucrative business. And at the time, I guess I bought into the notion that if the federal government were involved in any endeavor, it would increase the value and and make things better. Only to learn that there's a payday someday for just about anything that you do. And
there's no such thing as a free lunch, huh?
Right. And of course, federal regulations change, and usually they change for the worst. So it came to a place. I think the last house that I purchased that was an FHA property was, maybe 1992 or 93 in Arizona, and that property was had an older FHA loan on it that was still fully assumable. They did away with assumability in 1978, so that you could no longer assume an FHA mortgage without jumping through a lot of hoops and paying some extra fees and things of that sort. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, you could pay, if I remember correctly, $125 in fees and assume anyone's FHA loan. That kind of drove the marketplace. That was a good thing. And many homes that had gotten older and deteriorated and so forth and needed some tender love and care to get them back into the mainstream of things in the real estate industry. Those things, when they disallowed investors assuming these properties, fixing them up, and reselling them, mm-hmm. It was the first. It was like the first whatever that they pulled out from under the market and so forth. And FHA had gotten so corrupt in the 1990s and the early 2000s that it was just unconscionable to nobody really wanted to deal with FHA or FHA products. And they kind of tried to clean up their act, and out of pure necessity, in our latest downturn in the market, we've gone back to FHA. But I'd love to see the government completely out of the business of helping people purchase homes.
What do you think has been the biggest detriment because of that?
Well, just the overregulation, the fact that and by the way, there's quite a lot of favoritism in that. If you fit into this narrow window of making X amount of dollars but not making too much, you can qualify for this and that and so forth. And those kinds of picking the winners and the losers in those situations, to me, is just very, very un-American. Mm-hmm. I don't see that as a positive thing at all.
Yeah. Have you seen that hurt? What has been some of the consequences of that?
Well, it hurts in that so many people. I think back into the early 1980s when I made. And by the way, for a while prior to becoming an independent, altogether 24-hour, 7-day realtor, I actually worked for AT&T. And when I worked for AT&T, I made pretty good money. And I came to a place where it was costing me to go to work because I was making more money at night and on weekends than I was making working for AT&T. So I left AT&T. Things went well for a while, and we had this serious downturn in the marketplace. And suddenly, I couldn't afford to make my house payment.
Sounds like a lot of people at that time.
You know the consequences of that. And if you remember, I guess the year was 1980 or 81. Interest rates spiked at about 19 or 20%, and actually got up to 22 or 23 for a while on the home mortgages. Well, I had just purchased a home before all of this happened at about 18%. Interest rates dropped about the time that I left AT&T and things got really bad. Interest rates dropped to a place where I could have refinanced to about 6.5%, I believe, but I didn't qualify because I couldn't show the income. Although it would have reduced my payment drastically and probably allowed me to keep my house, I wound up doing what was called a voluntary repossession, or a deed in lieu of foreclosure, they call it. And, of course, that hurt my credit for a time and so forth. But just those kinds of rules don't make a lot of sense. The rules don't really apply in such a way as there's an equilibrium across the board. They're very, very favorable to some and unfavorable to others.
Yeah. So when you talked about the your experience with globalism affecting business, were there any other examples that you had with that?
Well, gosh, there are so many. It's kind of sad it's very sad that we don't internalize and consciously I don't know what I'm looking for here. When we make decisions based on some internal need that we have instead of, and I've learned not to do this. I no longer just run down and buy a new car because I can. Gosh, I'll tell you a little story. We're going to hear a story. I bought. I'll never forget. I should say, when the new Lexus came out. My late wife and I had a Ford Thunderbird. In fact, when we married, I bought her a new Ford Thunderbird Town Landau, and boy, what a beautiful car. Well, it lasted a little over a year, maybe two, and we had a lot of trouble with the transmission. We went back to Ford. We had a 1-year warranty on that car, and we were just out of our warranty on it. And Ford basically told us they weren't having problems with the car and told us to go away. And they wanted about 1/3 the original price of the car to fix it. We took the car to an independent and got it fixed for substantially less, and sold the car. I wanted to buy my wife a new car at that point. We decided, and this just broke my heart because at the time I was Buy American, Made in America, and da-da-da-da.
Right.
And she wanted a Toyota Cressida. 1979 Toyota Cressida is what we wound up purchasing. And at the time, they weren't discounting those things at all. I mean, you paid at least sticker, if not over sticker, for them.
Wow.
Well, I managed to make a deal to get one for sticker price, paying cash. Wow. Anyway, we purchased the car, and it didn't take me long to fall in love with it. I was absolutely in love with the car. Well, a few years after she passed away, they came out with a Lexus, and I had to have one of those because if that Toyota was good, that Lexus had to be better. And by the way, it was. It was a wonderful car. I bought my Lexus in, gosh, I can't remember the years now. They're going away. I believe it was 1990 when I purchased my Lexus. 1989. It was in 89. I bought my Lexus in 1989, and I was doing quite a lot of investing, and we had a kind of a downturn in the early 90s, if you remember. And I had to make a decision at one point. and it was either give up the Lexus or give up my house.
The house was more roomy than the Lexus?
Actually, the Lexus was image for me at the time because of my sales and because of a lot of things that I was doing. And I made a decision to sell my house.
You got the Lexus.
And I had a couple of friends that wanted me to move in with them, and I said no. And I probably could have squeezed things around and found a small apartment or a room to rent or something of that sort till I get back on my feet. And, people were telling me, file bankruptcy. And I said, man, I just don't do that. I'm sorry. So I wound up joining a health club right around the corner from where my office was, and I would go there every evening and shower, change into sweats, and go get into my Lexus and drive somewhere and find a place to park and sleep for the night.
Oh, wow.
I had put the really dark windows on so nobody could see inside the car, and I'd get up early the next morning, wake up early the next morning, drive back to the health club, go inside, shower, put on my clothes for the day, and I did that for about 4 months and saved my money till I could get back into another house. And that's one of the most memorable experiences I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely fun. It was just fun.
Really?
I
Wow.
really enjoyed that.
That's
yes.
something.
Yeah.
That's something I wouldn't think I would have called fun.
Well, I was a single guy. Didn't have a care in the world, and didn't really need a house, I guess.
At the
because
time,
I
yeah.
sure made it well without one. It was
Had some extra spending cash, I bet you.
Yes, it was a great experience to be able to save the money that I would have paid in rent or whatever, and help me get back on my feet.
Great. Well, Bob, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us and sharing us with the story you had. It's not we go kind of recapping what we talked about. It's not just about economics. You learned it's about you had employees to take care of
Yes.
as well. And so, yes, in a free country and in a country where we want to be self-sufficient, a profit is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. We don't want the government in our way.
Right.
And so that's exactly why we don't want our politicians working with totalitarian regimes to strengthen them.
Exactly.
Because that's what we're doing, and we're also hurting ourselves. You've seen some businessmen actually say that China is actually more free with business than America is in some circumstances, and so it's important that we don't work with those people and aid and trade with an enemy that will destroy us and prop them up to destroy the liberty of their own people, but that we make ourselves more free so that we are free to pursue happiness and to in the way of having property and being able to control it and being able to have a business, and that's what we need to do. And when we see politicians like Governor Herbert destroying our liberty, it's important that we call them out on it. I appreciate you joining us tonight on Defending Utah Radio. If you want to support us, please go to defendingutahradio.org and donate. And every $5 donation will enter you into a lifetime membership drawing to Frontside Weapons Training. Also, like us on Facebook at Defending Utah. And we'll see you next Monday through Friday, 5 to 7, right here on 540 AM.
Why do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down at the critical moment, like running away from the waves of the ocean? We head for the hills with the high tide approaching, as sand slips away from the castle. When it's time to stand upright, why do we falter, like placing our freedom on the sacrificial altar? We hold tight to our fears and defend our oppressors as we fight for their lives and become the transgressors. As pacifists transform to violent aggressors, but I'm only a stranger here. I'm alone.